Hello, guys, and welcome to Odds Premier League Match Day 20. Hello, Tom Rennie. All good?
I'm doing very well. Match day 20. I was just counting. Is that right? Have we done 20 weeks already? That's crazy.
It's the first round of the first match day of the second round. We had so many caps this week or the past week that is difficult actually to know where we are. But Tom, match day 20, we have Arsenal on top of the table. So we are here to analyze everything that is going to happen in the weekend in England. Guys, remember to leave your comments, tell us your tips, press the like, of course, subscribe, tell your friends that we are here to analyze this new match day now. And it's always very difficult, actually, in this time of the year, January, February, to follow the British football with all the cups, League Cup, FA Cup. And since I'm sure so many people are going to ask you, Tom, before we analyze match day 20, we have one game on Thursday evening, Fulham-Chelsea. This is, you were telling me, postponed since the Queen died. If someone didn't know, by the way, the Queen of England passed away some weeks ago. Just fresh news for you. And we have this Fulham-Chelsea. Tom, surprisingly, Chelsea is still very favorite. Fulham, they are doing a great job in this start of the season. I don't know if the push-up of Joao Felix is going to rise Chelsea's hopes, or here, if someone wants to place a bet, going for Fulham could be a good idea.
The only issue with doing Fulham is the issue I've said to you all season with them. Great season, terrific wins. It does feel like in a lot of games that things are falling in their favour. You know, for example, Crystal Palace getting 2 players sent off. But no Mitrovic. No Mitrovic in this game. Amazingly, it's taken this long for him to get 5 yellow cards. That's maybe the most stunning story of the entire season. So no Mitrovic takes away a lot of Fulham's attacking impetus. It'd be Vinicius who plays up front, I would assume, who ain't so clever. So I think that changes everything about Fulham. Great season for so many players. Paulinho and Reed and Decordova-Reid and a few others been brilliant. Tim Ream, obviously, the goalkeeper Leno, some great seasons. But without Mitrovic, they would be 10 points worse off than where they are. There'd be many goals worse off than where they are. And that gives Chelsea a bit of an opening because it has been so bad. It's been so bad in recent weeks. And look, it's not so bad compared to the other clubs in the country. Everyone outside the top 6, the elite 6, the super 6 would love to have a season like Chelsea are having. Bit of a blip, but in general, it's been fine. But for Chelsea supporters used to winning and winning and winning and winning and winning, not used to the feeling of being immortal, let's put it that way. You know, they're finding it difficult to cope with this. You know, they're not able just to blow other teams out of the water in terms of the transfer market or keep hold of their world-class players, etc., etc., etc. And frankly, Todd Boehly is bringing in such a mishmash of nonsense players. I'm not sure anyone knows exactly what the team is supposed to be, let alone what Graham Potter's trying to do with it. So, weird game, this one. I feel for Graham Potter in that the injury list is still ludicrously long. Now, I don't usually give teams like a pass on this sort of thing, but the list is crazy. For tonight's game, for Thursday's game, Conte, James, Fofana, potentially Aubameyang, Chilwell, Broja, Loftus-Cheek, Sterling, Pulisic, Mendy. That's the players out. That's not like the subs bench. That's half the team. And Pulisic's maybe been their best player since the return from the World Cup. So, massive amount of players out. Fulham without their best player. I think everyone rather they rearrange this for another date. If you're looking for a bet here, I would suggest draw, potentially 0-0. I would say double chance for Chelsea might make you some money here. Chelsea win, or it goes to a point apiece. And I'd also be looking here for it to be low scoring. Go under 2.5 in this game. That's 0-0. That's 1-0 either way, and that's a 1-1 draw. That's what I'd be looking at here. Probably a Chelsea 1-0 win, but I think it's going to be a tough night for both teams, actually.
We have Brendan telling us under 2.5 goals. Ronnie,
Yeah.
Chelsea to win. Marco, loving the double chance for Fulham, but be careful because Mitrovic won't be there. This is a super derby. Both stadiums are really, really close by. I will ask you later about the new signing of João Felix or loan when we analyze Chelsea Crystal Palace, but before, let's jump into the new match day. Every single game we have football in the islands. On Thursday is this Fulham Chelsea, and on Friday we have Aston Villa Leeds. Shocking defeat, I would say, for Aston Villa in the cup. They were leading against Stevenage, and then they conceded in the last minute, so they are out. They drew in the last game in the Premier League against Wolverhampton. Also, a draw is what Leeds got against West Ham. Still, Aston Villa with this good run of fixtures under Unai Emery, big favourites for this game.
Yeah, understandably so. I think that Aston Villa under Unai Emery, despite the disappointment against Stevenage you mentioned, and the great thing about the FA Cup still, despite the issues and need for reform, is that things like that can happen. And Villa obviously had their eye off the ball at 1-0 up against Stevenage with 5 minutes to go. Of course they did. They conceded a penalty and a corner, and that's the way it goes. It's an embarrassment and it's a shame and all that sort of stuff. But we've all fallen victim to that sort of thing at some point in the FA Cup as football fans, because that is what the FA Cup is all about, that sort of result. So it's one Villa will need to swallow. They can soothe and salve themselves with how good their performances have been in the league under Unai Emery. Very impressive in that victory against Tottenham Hotspur. Impressive in the victory against Brighton and Hove Albion before the break. And I thought against Wolves last week, they got a bit unlucky because I feel like, Unai Emery has come in, and firstly, Villa are used to having this new manager bounce. New manager, impress him, a couple of times in the last year. So we saw that in the first couple of weeks. Against Wolves, it was the first game they've played, really, where I think we expected them to win under Unai Emery. And that changes things. And Wolverhampton Wanderers under Lopetegui were so negative, looked to hold on, 7 at the back, hit them on the break. It worked effectively well. So they get drawn into a Lopetegui plan last week, and it worked out well for Wolves. Leeds don't play like that. Leeds are going to be very open, very offensive, try to outmuscle, try to outwork. At times they will, but I think Villa, and people like Douglas Luiz and people like Kamara, I think John McGinn is missing for this game, so that's potentially a blow for Villa. But the quality players they've got, Leon Bailey, the chaos merchant that is, Ollie Watkins, now the confirmed number 1 striker at Aston Villa. They've decided quite rightly, Coutinho, no good, don't use him anymore. They've decided that Danny Ings is the number 2, which is, a debatable point, but a decision had to be made, and it seems Unai Emery has made it. So I think you're going to see Villa here on the front foot from the first. I think you're going to see Villa score in the first half and second half of this game. And Leeds, if they're going to win a game, nothing's really changed for them. They've got to score 3 goals. They have to score 3 goals to win a game. Otherwise, they're not going to be able to do so. They concede so many goals. Got to say, I was impressed by the defensive performance away against Newcastle, but they come at home against West Ham, who don't score many themselves. And what happens? They're conceding rubbish goals, conceding a rubbish penalty, giving the ball away to Skamaka, who scored West Ham second. They make a lot of defensive errors. I think Leeds here are going to go hell for leather, toe-to-toe, try and get something from it. And I actually think Villa might win quite comfortably. I'd say Villa win without conceding, scoring in both halves, and 2-1 is quite nice for a Villa win, considering how it's been. But I might look at the over. I might look at it at over 2.5 goals in the game. Over 2.5 goals, Aston Villa win, and they score in both halves.
All right. Most of the people here also trust Villa. So let's back Villa with this odds 2.0. Next game. Manchester Derby is the next game. Man United, Man City. I'm sure the Red Devils fans are waiting for vendetta since they received 6 goals some months ago from Man City. They lost actually the last 3 derbies. We have United in an amazing run, 8 consecutive victories in official games, also victories in all the cups. And we have City with back-to-back victories against Chelsea. I guess we have to agree, Tom, that it won't be that easy as it was some months ago.
Or yeah.
You think
no, I think you're right. I think you're right. I think that, just at 4.5 for Man United to win. That's already. We could probably wrap this up now. That's quite nice. I mean, that's worth a tenner of anyone's money, I think, because look at how well United have played. Not in terms of maybe entertainment value, not in terms of maybe being back to the 90s, and not in terms of quality of opposition either, it has to be said. Since we came back from the World Cup break, Forest, Wolves, Bournemouth. That's 3 of the bottom 5, 2 of the bottom 3, and they beat them quite comfortably, and you'd expect them to beat them. So, you've got to put a bit of a pin in that, plus the victories in the Cups as well against lower-ranked opposition. So, was it Charlton and the team in the League Cup? Oh, I forget now. Burnley. That was it, Burnley. So, walking over some pretty simple teams. That was it. And Everton as well in the other cup. That was it. So they played some pretty poor teams. They haven't played anyone of particular note. So you've got to take that into account. But you look at what's happening now. Wins breed confidence. Wins breed belief in the manager. Wins breed belief in what he's doing. Look at Marcus Rashford scoring goals. Look at Anthony Martial returning to the striking form we were told about in pre-season. Look at Bruno Fernandes finally having a position. Look at Casemiro and Eriksen in the central midfield roles. 2 old campaigners, 2 old pros working together brilliantly well. Even Harry Maguire's getting a game and playing reasonably well. There's some talk he might be leaving during this transfer window. So who knows if we'll play in this game. Same for Wan-Bissaka. We thought he'd be leaving and now he's starting every game. So very good times for Manchester United. For Manchester City, something at the moment hasn't quite clicked since the return from the World Cup. I went to the Chelsea game a couple of days ago and the formation in the first half was inexplicable. I know Guardiola is a genius, but we also know that he massively overthinks things. I wonder if he was able to pick the team and pick the formation, then go out for dinner and not think about it for 2 days, whether they might have beaten Chelsea more comfortably. In the second half, he was like, should we maybe not have the right back on the wing and just put that winger we've got on the wing, see what happens? Which he did. Mahrez scored. Grealish set him up. And they won that game in the end. He said he's got a master plan for this game. Let's hope for City fans' sake that he doesn't and just picks a team because his players are better than every opposition's players in every game they can possibly play. Their bench is better than every opposition bench they ever come up against. So don't overthink it. Put your great players out. Get out there and win the game. In terms of the game, recent results suggest quite low scoring. In games between these two, we've seen goals at both ends. So I wouldn't discount the draw market here. I would not discount the 1-1 draw market. Both teams score, the game ends a draw. I expect Man City to score first. I expect United to be quite defensive, low block, contain City. I expect City to raise their game from what we have seen since the return of the Premier League. So City score first. United will equalise. From that point, it's a toss-up. Double chance, Man United win and draw. Both teams score. And I also like just Man United to win at 4.5. That is worth some money, I think.
That double chance is 2.15 for Man United or draw. We were taking a look actually at our tip section, and we saw, for instance, both teams to score that you mentioned. Also, Brendan mentioned it. 1.67. Everyone, by the way, can go there and write the tip for this game. We have also double chance, 2.14 from Ruano. So let's see what happens. This is very, very interesting also because I guess Arsenal fans are supporting and backing Man United to beat Man City in this game. Massive, massive game. We have a very good match day, I have to say, with good games because the next one is also interesting one. Brighton, Liverpool, because Brighton, they thrashed Middlesbrough in the Cup, Everton in the Premier League, both games played away, and now they host Liverpool, unable to beat Wolves in the FA Cup, and with that defeat against Brentford. Everyone is mocking Darwin Núñez, actually, in England, Tom.
Yeah, they're having some fun with him because with Darwin Núñez, I mean, briefly on him, like a raging bull of a footballer, brilliant at some things, but you see it so often with great players and talented players. Often they're so much better when they can't think about it. When they can't think about it, when they don't have time to think about it. And he's such a great instinctive player. But when he has time to think, right, what am I going to do now? He invariably, at this moment in time, is getting it wrong. But, I mean, let's start with Brighton because I think that there's been some great performances from them. The Everton victory in the league was sensational. It's going so well for them that they've sold player after player after player. And suddenly this boy, Evan Ferguson, this 18-year-old Irish kid, comes out of nowhere and he scored 2 in 3. Scored against Arsenal, scored against Everton. He was going to go out on loan somewhere. Now suddenly he's on a run of goals and will start against Liverpool this weekend, which is crazy. 3 wins in 2 since coming back. The loss against Arsenal was unfortunate. They probably could have got something from that game as it went on. So really impressed with them. And I think they have added goals to their team. There's just a belief. When you watch a team who believe, it doesn't matter how good the players are, who the striker is. They just believe they can create chance after chance after chance. They're daring in games. And that could be an issue for Liverpool because Liverpool at the moment are kind of caught between a rock and a hard place. In some games, they go all-out attack. Aston Villa didn't quite work out for them. They won the game in the end, but there were holes for Villa to exploit who could have got something from it. Against Leicester, had to come from behind, took a bit of luck and the pressure of Anfield for them to get back in that game, and the 2 own goals by Wout Faes. And against Brentford, they were overawed. You know, they were just out-muscled by Brentford, who scored some real basic goals, you know, corners and tap-ins and bullying, but you're not meant to be able to bully Liverpool. That's exactly what they did. So I think that's what Brighton might try to do in this game. They'll try a really intense press game. They're trying and get after them. And, you know, one wonders whether Darwin Núñez will hit the target. So I think that's what Brighton are going to do. But I just think Liverpool are still... maybe I'm getting drawn into the last season thing, the Klopp thing. I don't know. But I still think they're too strong. I still think this Liverpool team are going to come good as the second half of the season gets well underway. And they're still 2 games short of 19, by the way. Salah scoring goals again. Núñez, despite his issues hitting the target, he is someone who will score some spectacular goals and create for other people. I think that there will be midfield reinforcements in January, currently still looking light in that area. And of course, the absence of Virgil van Dijk is going to be keenly felt. It's going to be an issue. It's going to lead to more conceded goals. So firstly, both teams score here. Absolutely go both teams score. There's money to be made on all the possible bets. I'd be looking here at late goals. I think you're going to get goals all the way through, but I would be looking for a winning goal here scored in the final 10 minutes for either team, actually. I'm going to pick for Liverpool personally. Salah to get it on the break as Brighton push for a winner, but goals at both ends, maybe goals for both teams in both halves. Go for the over for me on the scoreline here, because I think it will be a thriller of a game at the Amex, but I would go for Liverpool win, both teams score.
Both teams to score only pays 1.58. If we go for over 3 goals, as we were seeing, for instance, is 2.0. It's going to be funny not to watch that Liverpool-Real Madrid in 1 month. I think no one can predict what is going to happen because things will change a lot in both clubs, actually, in Liverpool and Real Madrid. So difficult to read these 2 teams right now. But before Liverpool, they have to focus, of course, in the Premier League because they are 7 points away from the Champions League spots. And the other team in Merseyside is Everton playing at home against Southampton. This is the scary game of the weekend. Both teams to lose game. Everton also out of the FA Cup. I just read that Everton's owner, Farhad Moshiri, has backed Frank Lampard, actually. Yeah. So probably is the previous step to being sacked if Frank Lampard doesn't win this game against Southampton.
Yeah, kind of. But I also get the feeling from Everton that they've just tried everything. They've tried everything for so many years. They've had so many managers now. Like some clubs, like West Ham, for example, have had less than 20 managers in their 125-odd year history. Whereas Everton have had like 10 managers in about 6 years, it feels like. I mean, what we've gone through now, Silva, Allardyce, Ancelotti, Benitez, Lampard, Martinez, I'm missing Koeman. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's too many managers. How can anyone possibly know? Some good ones, some bad ones, some defensive ones, some offensive ones, some English ones, some European ones. It's just mad. How could you know? And some of these players were bought 3 managers ago. And it takes time for a manager to build the team that he wants. You often need to replace half the team in a year or so to fit the new manager and the way they want to play. So it is a mess. And I've got to say, there's been some bad performances from teams this season. There really has. You look at some of the Wolves games, the West Ham games, terrible performances. But Everton at home against Brighton was a shambles. Like if any game was a sackable offence, it was that one. So for them to stick by him, that's really, really interesting because obviously Sean Dyche continues to lurk in the background of all these clubs down the bottom. Someone, if you bring him in, you'll do 4-4-2 and you'll probably stay in the Premier League if you do that. So that's lurking for a lot of these clubs. And Dyche nearly went to Everton previously when he was Burnley manager. What are they going to do? Well, they're going to be ultra defensive because that's what Frank Lampard is as a manager. He's not a risk taker. There'll be 4 or 5 defenders. I expect Cody, Holgate, and Tarkowski across the back line. I expect Coleman on the right and potentially Mikolenko on the left. I expect 3 or 4 holding midfielders. And if Calvert-Lewin is fit, up front, on his own, trying to hold it up and wait for Alex Iwobi or Damari Gray to join him. That's what they will do. For Southampton, I watched a lot of the Forest game where they lost 1-0. Nathan Jones has come in. Great win in the Carabao Cup. But in the league, they've been atrocious. And Southampton under Ralph Hasenhüttl previously were a football team, short passing and 4-4-2. And, they tried to play a very traditional get down the wings, cut it back kind of way of playing. Very basically. Nathan Jones, in the Forest game at least, they were just walloping it upfield. Just wallop and wallop and wallop again and hope something happened. I don't think right now the players are having him. I certainly don't think the players are good enough. And I think this potentially is a Southampton team that are going to go down bottom of the league. Beyond James Ward-Prowse scoring great free kicks and whatnot, there's no quality really in that team that I can see in terms of winning Premier League games. Oh, this is horrible, this one, because Everton, I think, going to win. So I think you've got to go for Everton because I can't see Southampton on the run of losses they're on getting something against Everton. I can't even see them drawing this game unless James Ward-Prowse scores a free kick. I think it's going to be ratty and niggly and stressful and awful. I don't expect to go in the first half. So go 0-0 at half time. I expect Everton to win this game in the second half with an underscore line of under 2.5 goals in the game. Everton win without conceding on the under.
All right, we have Blue Shark saying Everton to win, and we have Monsieur Arteta trusting Southampton after the victory against City in the League Cup. And I think the correct opinion is Brendan's.
That's good, actually. Do the corners. Yes, I should have said that. I thought that. Do the corners. Blue Shark is right. Do the corners.
And Brendan as well. God knows who wins. So, yeah, from the relegation battle in Everton, Southampton to another one, Forest, Leicester City. They are both away from the bottom 3, but very close to Liverpool, to Everton, because Leicester, they are again in bad form out of the League Cup. They lost the last 3 Premier League games, so they are very close actually now from the bottom 3. Whereas for Forest, they lost in the cup, but they got a very, very important victory against Southampton away in the last game.
This is a horrible game. It's a horrible week, actually. There's so few favourites for this weekend that I've really struggled to pick out definitives. There's no great definitives for this weekend, and this is another one of those games because Nottingham Forest, you kind of get the feeling, or at least I do, they're on the verge. They're on the verge of either kicking on and getting to 35 points, or they're going to struggle to make 25, 28. This is the moment for Nottingham Forest. The positivity is all there. The victory at Southampton, the result in the Carabao Cup, wind in the sails. Can they capitalise on that and roll on to another victory against local rivals Leicester? That is such an interesting question. Decent injury list: Kouyaté, Richards, Biancone, Williams, Awoniyi, Jesse Lings, Jay Lings, all missing for that game. So, bit of a shame, but there's still lots of good players in there. And I think Brennan Johnson has been brilliant since the return of the Premier League. Struggled for Wales during the World Cup, but looks like a player full of confidence again, like the player we saw in the Championship. So that's going to be interesting. Plus, their victories this season, bar the Southampton one previously, have all been at home. Their best performances have all been at home, and the victories have all been won by 1-0. Crystal Palace, Liverpool, and West Ham are the ones that stand out. So I think Forest have got every chance of winning this game. For Leicester, the issue for Leicester City is they were conceding a lot of goals, but they were scoring a lot of goals. And they were scoring a lot of goals because mainly of how good James Maddison was. And James Maddison continues to be out. And there's some talk, I'm not one for transfer tittle-tattle, but there's some talk that he might not be at Leicester come February because there are teams in for James Maddison. We know Newcastle were in massively during the summer and last January. And we know Leicester have got seemingly some financial issues at this moment in time. So if they sold James Maddison, I think you've got a massive problem because there's no one else creating chances. Beyond that, no one else has hit any sort of form this season. And he's missing for this game. So go with tradition. I would say Nottingham Forest, having beaten a bunch of teams 1-0 already this season, their victories home and away have all been by 1-0, including the game a couple of days ago. Go with it again. A 5th 1-0 victory of the season for Nottingham Forest against Leicester City. Low scoring, obviously, under 2.5, as you can hear. Don't see Leicester scoring in this game, but I do think Forest win it. 1-0, back it.
Okay. Well, there are so many tips, and everyone has a different opinion, actually. Like Chris going for Leicester to win, Marco going for a draw. If Madison is not there, Forest to win. Tough one. The odds, as you can see, they are very similar for Nottingham Forest or for Leicester City to win, and exactly the same we can say in the next game. Wolves, West Ham, exactly the same odds for Wolves to win, for West Ham to win. At least Tom, the Hammers won in the FA Cup against Brentford. They grabbed a point against Leeds. So some green lights in West Ham field. And for Wolves, you've mentioned how negative they were in the draw against Aston Villa, but here and there they are getting results also in the cup against Liverpool.
Well, both of these teams are down there because of how rubbish they've been at home. That's the key reason that both Wolves and West Ham are sitting in and around the relegation places. Wolves, 9 games at home, just 2 victories, just 5 goals scored at home all season. Pretty pitiful. 4 straight defeats in that time as well, including against Man United since we returned from the World Cup. Their last win was against Forest, 1-0 back in October. But West Ham, also one of the worst teams away from home. They've beaten Villa, apart from that, 2 points in their last 5, and even against Leeds. Look, Leeds could have won that game in the end, right? Sure. But West Ham at 2-1 up, they should have been able to get something from that game. They should have won it from that point. And they just, at the moment, can't hold on to results. So this one, I mean, there's a reason that no one knows what's going to happen, because no one knows what's going to happen. I think that 1-0 either way is the most obvious bet for this match. I think it's going to be low. There's not going to be loads of goals. I can guarantee you that. There will not be loads of goals, because I think West Ham have started to realise how much trouble they are in. I think Wolves already know how much trouble they are in. There's a general feeling, I think, that West Ham will pull out of it at some point, but surely we're at some point by now. Like, they just don't win games of football. Even at 2-1 up, they don't win games of football. So I think here you've got to look at Wolverhampton Wanderers. Whoever scores the first goal will win this game, in my opinion. I don't think both teams will score. Last year, it finished 1-0 to Wolverhampton Wanderers in a pretty drab game of football. I can see that happening again. I think with West Ham, if Skamaka is fit and he looks a bit better last couple of games, I think with Ben Rama and I think with Declan Rice and Paqueta showing a couple of moments in the last couple of games that he might be getting the feel for the Premier League. I think if Nea Figuer and Kurt Zouma get to play together at centre-half for pretty much the first time this season, I might just pip for West Ham. I might do. But I've seen them foul it up so many times that my feeling here is that you go 1-0 either way. I have no idea who's going to win it. I'd be looking at low shots. I'd be looking at low scoring. I'd be looking at 0-0 at half-time. I'd be looking at West Ham to have 15 corners and score from none of them. And that's about it. 1-0 either way.
It's very difficult to pick a winner, as you said, perhaps going for under 2 goals, under 2.5 goals. It's funny, even reading the comments, no? We have Lyle going for Wolves, Esther going for West Ham, and the whole match day, actually, apart from the Aston Villa Leeds game, that everyone was back in Aston Villa, is the same. It's very difficult to predict. Perhaps in the next one, everyone agrees that we should back Brentford, because we have Brentford, Bournemouth. We know that Brentford, they are very strong playing at home. They show it against Liverpool or West Ham, for instance, recently. West Ham was an away game, no defeats in the last 6 games in the Premier League. And Bournemouth, they are keeping their bad form. Out also in the cup, 5 consecutive defeats in all competitions. So this one should be an easy one, I guess, for Brentford.
I think so. I think this may be the only one I really fancy this weekend, because Brentford, if Ivan Toney is fit and well, and he should be, which is the only variable for me, you know, their home form has been terrific. They've beaten some really good teams recently, some terrific performances, some great organisation, some good goals. You know, it's all there at the moment for Brentford. And I feel like they're a team who could do well this year. I think there's a Conference League place, maybe a Europa League place up for grabs, and the home form of Brentford might get them there. Just one defeat all season, 4 victories, 4 draws. The only concern is when they've played some of the poorer teams at home this season, they've taken their foot off the gas. That electric atmosphere at the G-Tech isn't there as it is for Liverpool or Arsenal or whatever at home. So that's my only doubt. But I think Brentford are going to score goals here because Bournemouth defence, 39 goals conceded. It might be the worst. It's one of the worst. I think it might be the worst in the Premier League, home and away this season. They are going to concede goals. So one thing I will guarantee you this weekend is Brentford will score. So Brentford will score. This game, I think, will be a bit of a cruise for Brentford, actually. I just can't see Bournemouth scoring in this game. I think Brentford will be swarmed or will swarm over Bournemouth. I think that they will be doing a bunch of long throws in the box. They'll get over 8 corners in this game. They'll score more than likely at least 2 headed goals and win 3-0. And that's what I see. I don't see much in Bournemouth. I just don't see much in the team. I don't see much in what they offer the Premier League. I don't see really how they play, how they go about it. And I think they're going to struggle to stay in the league. And they're going to struggle to win any more games this season. And I think they might end up conceding 80 to 100 goals as the season goes on as well. And maybe confidence starts to drain. So in this game, look at the Brentford corner market, over 8. Look at Brentford score 2 or more goals and double it up with Ivan Toney scoring as well. Nice, comfortable, easy Brentford win.
Ivan Toney to score, for instance, Blue Shark is saying, and you are completely right, Tom. Bournemouth conceded 29 goals away this season, the highest tally, then followed by Nottingham Forest with 22. So the distance is big. They are very poor when they are traveling. It was 7 or 8, no? In Anfield, for instance.
Yeah, 9, wasn't it? Was it 9? I think 9. And then Scott Parker got sacked, didn't he, the day after?
So on Sunday, we have 3 more games. Chelsea, Crystal Palace. You've analyzed Chelsea before. We had a good piece of art from our social media team, by the way, showing the really poor points average with Graham Potter on the bench. Is one of the poorest in the recent years for Chelsea. And I want to know also your opinion about Joao Felix, if this is a good signing, if Chelsea needs him, or just because everyone is injured, or how do you see Joao Felix fitting in this Chelsea?
Well, look, they do need players, Chelsea, weirdly, despite the fact they've bought so many. But with the amount of players they've got out, which I listed earlier on, they do need bodies on the field. And I went to the City game, as I mentioned earlier, and it just it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense right now, but how can it make sense when you consider that you can't create an attack or a midfield with half your team missing? It's just kind of plugging holes all the time. So I can see the need to bring in players. I'm not sure they need to bring in someone who plays in Kai Havertz's position. Like, they already have Kai Havertz, right? And he actually seems to be a player they're trying to build the team around. He is someone that Graham Potter would love to develop, because he's kind of doing for Chelsea what Adam Lallana was doing for Brighton. Popping up in the pocket, dropping deep, doing what he wants, drifting around, creating the play, getting on the end of things. He's not a striker. He's a kind of all-round, creative, almost number 10 type, a drifting number 10. So they've already got someone like that, which I assume is where Joao Felix is going to play. So do you put them together? I don't think you can go into the same team with Felix and Kai Havertz. That doesn't make any sense. So the player doesn't make sense to me, but the need for bodies does. And maybe there is a plan. It just goes to another school. I don't know. I think good player, obviously, going to get out of Atleti because the Simeone thing, it's all over. They can't work together. And so before Simeone goes, just get out of the club. We won't lose this really valuable asset. And he might be sellable come the end of the season to somebody else, or again, vital to Atleti come next season, and a new manager. So I see it, but I don't see it. And I'd be surprised if he's a big hit at Stamford Bridge. The issue, I think, is defence for Chelsea. If your attack is missing, you've got to stop conceding rubbish goals. And the goal against City wasn't great. Grealish gets in. No one tracks Mahrez. Kepa doesn't put his arm out to a cross in the box, which is weird. And Badiashile coming in, I think, is a bigger deal than Felix coming in, because Koulibaly looks too fat and slow for the Premier League, and Thiago Silva's too old. and they brought in a 21-year-old, really good left-sided centre-half. Perfect. That's a great signing, I think, for Chelsea. I think he should be available to play in this game as well, and that could make a massive difference. And I actually think they're going to win this game as well, Chelsea, because Crystal Palace, away from home, what they've done is put Wilfried Zaha up front. I don't think that really works. It worked against West Ham when he nicked a goal off of some bad West Ham play. Tilo Kehrer, would you believe? So it worked briefly in that game, but they don't really have someone to play up front. And when you take Zaha away from the left wing, I don't think that Elise or Eze or the other players they play in that position have the same ability. I also think with Crystal Palace that they defend well, but in away games, they get so negative, they can get drawn into to no way to attack because they're defended so much. So I actually think Crystal Palace, despite 2 victories away from home this season, are going to lose here. I think they will have a very similar performance to the one we saw at Everton back in October, where they'll look to sit deep, but when they concede the first goal, it's finished. And I think Chelsea, it's fun to poke holes at Chelsea. It's fun to have a bit of a laugh at them because of their success in recent years and all that sort of stuff. Plus, they're in the Super Six, so it's fun for the rest of us. But I do think they're going to turn it around. I do think they're going to win this game. I still think, despite the players missing, the squad, the team is incredibly strong. And I think they're going to come out fighting for Graham Potter in this game. So I think Chelsea win it. I think Chelsea win it without conceding. And I can see them scoring in both halves as well. 2-0 victory, Chelsea. That's my view.
Well, we were seeing the head-to-head between these two teams, and Chelsea won the last 11. 11-0 is the result in the head-to-head. We have Messi Arteta saying that the owners have no clue. Chelsea's owners, they have no clue. Well, for sure, Abramovich was spot on in many things. Let's see what they do. We need a little bit more of time. And next game is Newcastle Fulham, with Newcastle draw in the last 2 games, goalless draws. But it is important because, of course, getting a point in Arsenal's pitch is a positive result. Is still for Newcastle. And this Fulham you've analyzed before. Of course, Mitrovic should be back for this one and rested.
Yeah, exactly. Rested is a really important element of this for Mitrovic because he's always playing with 10 different injuries. So coming back to this game, being fit, being rested, being ready could be a nightmare for Newcastle. But Newcastle, how do you score against them? You know, defensively, they are so strong. Nick Pope, I think, has been the best goalkeeper in the league this season. I think in Sven Botman and Fabian Schär, defensively very, very strong. Kieran Trippier is in there for conversation in terms of best players in the league this season, all told. I think you look at the midfield where even Joe Willock is now starting to come back to some of the form that he showed during the back end of the Steve Bruce days. You know, Bruno Guimaraes been terrific. Callum Wilson's fit, but Chris Wood is playing. Alexander Isak has come back finally. And I think he's going to be a massive hit in the Premier League up front. So all that, plus Almiron being in tremendous form, despite carrying a bit of a knock, I think he should be okay for this. So Newcastle in terrific shape going into this game. I think that it's not going to be the same as the Leeds game. I think Newcastle, I think they struggled to get out of the frame of mind they were in for the Arsenal game a couple of days previously. I think the free-flowing positive energy of every game before Arsenal was kind of halted from that. And I think without training sessions and time to get away from it, I think they almost went into the Leeds game with a bit of trepidation. And I think Leeds surprised everyone with their defensive stability. And I think that was a bit of a surprise. I don't think that'll happen here. You know, look at the games that these teams have been involved in terms of goal scoring. Newcastle 32, Fulham 30. Mitrovic will, I think, be a massive player in this game. If Fulham get corners, they will take the chance. But I think Newcastle, they just look so good. I think Newcastle will realise that it's such an important game. They'll throw a bit more caution to the wind. If it's 0-0 in the 70th minute, there's suddenly Isak to bring on. There's suddenly Saint-Maximin fit at long last to bring on. That could change everything. I think Newcastle could win this from the bench. I can see it being goalless till late. I don't think Fulham will score because of how good Newcastle are defensively, but I think Newcastle will win it with late goals. Newcastle win without conceding. Look for the Almiron market if fit, because his goal-scoring run has been tremendous. But I think Newcastle win with goals coming from after the 70 minutes. So drawing at half-time, Newcastle winning at full-time, and the Magpies score late goals.
Viper is telling us that Newcastle are very solid in defense. Indeed, only 11 goals conceded in the Premier League, the lowest tally among all the clubs. And last, the North London Derby. We have Tottenham Arsenal after the draw that we mentioned against Newcastle for Arsenal. Let's see if under pressure, if City is able to win the other derby. In Manchester, I was checking the stats for the North London derby, and it's funny that the last 6 derbies were home victory, and I was checking the last away victory in the Premier League between these two teams in the North London derby, and it was in 2014, Tom.
Yeah. Yes, you won't be surprised to hear that I think home victory is not an unlikely outcome. Because this is the game that cost Arsenal with the Champions League last season. They went to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. I think Rob Holding got sent off in the first half, and they capitulated and crumbled against Tottenham that day. And that was the end of their run towards the Champions League, which looked likely before that happened. I think things have changed a lot since then. Look, I think Tottenham, great victory against Crystal Palace, though in the first half it could have gone either way. The 4-0 scoreline did flatter them, and it was another game where if Harry Kane isn't there, Tottenham don't win. You know, I don't think Rodrigo Bentancur is going to be back for this one, which leaves you with Højbjerg and Bissouma potentially in midfield. It's not a top-level midfield. Matt Doherty's still getting a game. You know, Perisic looks past his best. I'm not too sure about Eric Dyer. Romero loves kicking people. Longley doesn't look good enough. Lloris looks past his best. Still not quite clicking for Son, despite a bit of a better performance the other day. Still no Kulusevski. So there's all sorts of problems for Tottenham Hotspur. And the trouble is, you can't be crap for 60 minutes against Arsenal. You know, you can do it most weeks in the Premier League if you're Tottenham, if you don't concede. You can do it against Palace. You can do it against whoever. Arsenal aren't going to let them get away with that. And I think Arsenal continue to impress, continue to surprise. I think Xhaka and Partey midfield, superb. The entire defence is fit for the first time this season. So White, Saliba, Gabriel and Zinchenko have some pressure from the likes of Tierney and Tomiyasu to get in the team. I think that apart from Jesus, it's a very strong team. But look what Eddie Nketiah has done. Is it 6 in 5 or 5 in 6 now? Goals, I know against Oxford, but still scoring goals regularly. I think Arsenal here are going to be too blisteringly strong for Tottenham. I think at 2-1, 2.5-1, which it will be by the weekend, that's already money to be made there. I think Arsenal will score the first goal. I think Arsenal might well win the first half and Tottenham win the second half. But that might be 2 goals for Arsenal in the first half, 1 goal for Tottenham in the second, and Arsenal win it. I don't think you can start slow against Arsenal. And look at the recent history. Beyond the Crystal Palace game, they kept conceding the first goal, Tottenham. I think they go back to that now. So Arsenal win the game. Arsenal win the first half. Tottenham will get better. But by that point, I think the game will be out of sight for Arsenal. So the first away win in the North London derby for the best part of a decade. Both teams score. Arsenal win it, but Tottenham win the second half.
Most of our audience are backing Arsenal. This is a massive game. Even if we are in January for the title race, let's see if Man City drop points against Man United. But if Arsenal are able to win this derby, the morale, of course, is going to be very high. And next game is Man United. So it's a massive week for Arsenal and the title hopes. Well, Tom, wow, this match day is tough one to bet. Very good to watch. I think it's one of the best match days that we are going to have in the Premier League, but tough to bet. Let's see if we found a good safe bet, at least for this match day.
Yeah, there's a couple of moderate safe bets for this weekend, but I think you've got to look for the low odds and look for the big favourites. If we're talking about safe bets where you can put money on, you're more likely to win, I've taken just Chelsea to beat Crystal Palace. I did flirt with the idea of doing Brentford, but at 1.7, near 2-1 for Chelsea to win at home, despite their issues, it's still Chelsea. It's still Palace at home. Chelsea will turn this around. So why not this weekend? Chelsea over Palace at 1.7.
And Joao Felix is scoring, pointing to Simeone, showing Simeone's face. Why not? And your ACCA, recently you nailed one. Let's try another one.
Yeah, I'm still sticking with the trebles. This is not easy this week.
No.
But you've got 3 big teams in the top 4, usually, to win, which you can get for 7-1, which is not likely. Usually my trebles are around 5-1. So I've got Man City to win the Manchester derby. I've got Liverpool to win at Brighton and Arsenal to win at Tottenham. Now, this is a risky treble, but there's a potential 9-1 outcome if you go with it. And they are all in my view, more likely to win than not. So a 9-1 treble on City, Liverpool, Arsenal.
Okay, tell me, guys, in the comments if you are backing this ACCA, risky one. The odds are very high. We have a great match day ahead. Tom, see you next week. Thanks, everyone, for commenting the video with us, for following us. Keep liking us, of course, sharing and subscribing to our channel. And see you next week. Bye-bye.